Apple is launching a Siri chatbot and it's going to upset a lot of users. A fresh iPhone 18 Pro design leak proves previous rumors wrong. What the possible Apple event next week could be about. Another set of AirPods Pro are coming this year and why it's such a weird release, and more, all in today's episode of Apple Weekly. Okay, so first let's talk about Apple's new chatbot that's coming in iOS 27 as part of another Siri revamp. So this news comes from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, and he says this: Apple plans to revamp Siri later this year by turning the digital assistant into the company's first artificial intelligence chatbot. The chatbot, which is codenamed Campos, will be embedded deeply into the iPhone, iPad, and Mac operating systems and replace the current Siri interface. Like ChatGPT and Google Gemini, Apple's chatbot will allow users to search the web for information, create content, generate images, summarize information, and analyze uploaded files. It also will draw on personal data to complete tasks, being able to more easily locate specific files, songs, calendar events, and text messages. Unlike third-party chatbots running on Apple devices, the planned offering is designed to analyze open windows and on-screen content in order to take actions and suggest commands. It will also be able to control device features and settings, allowing it to make phone calls, set timers, and launch the camera. The chatbot's going to feature an Apple-designed UI, but rely heavily on a custom AI model developed by the Google Gemini team. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because it is, because we're also getting another new Siri before iOS 27, and that's coming with iOS 26.4. And Gurman does point that out. He says the iOS 26.4 update of Siri, the one before the true chatbot, will rely on a Google-developed system internally known as Apple Foundation Models version 10. That software will operate at 1.2 trillion parameters, a measure of AI complexity. Campos, however, will significantly surpass those capabilities because this chatbot is going to run a higher-end version of the Google Gemini model comparable to Gemini 3 that's known internally as Apple Foundation Models version 11. So in case you're lost, iOS 26.4 is going to launch a new Siri, a revamped Siri, but it's not going to be a chatbot version of Siri. It's just going to be a better version of Siri that's powered by Google Gemini, and the true chatbot version that's going to integrate with the applications and be able to do things like Gemini and ChatGPT, that's coming in iOS 27. So there's two new versions of Siri coming relatively soon. But here's where things get interesting and where I think a lot of users are going to get quite upset, because in this report it says, in a potential policy shift for Apple, the two partners are discussing hosting the chatbot directly on Google servers running powerful chips known as TPUs, or tensor processing units. The more immediate Siri, the 26.4 Siri, in contrast, will operate on Apple's own private cloud compute servers, which rely on high-end Mac chips for processing. Apple is paying Google roughly $1 billion annually for access to the models. The company may also turn to Google technology to enhance existing Apple Intelligence features. So you heard that right. The chatbot that's coming in iOS 27 might not actually fully run through Apple's private cloud compute, and it's instead going to run on Google's infrastructure, Google's cloud and TPUs. That is going to upset a lot of people, especially those who are, really worried about their security and their privacy. So of course, this is just a report as of right now. Nothing is confirmed until Apple officially says it. But that is quite interesting and quite the shift from what Apple is known for. So my guess is that it's not going to be fully on Google servers. Maybe it's going to be through private cloud compute first, and then if it needs to go further, then it goes to Google servers, or it's just going to be an option that you can configure. So that'll be interesting to see. Now, this report does also finish off by saying that Apple aims to unveil that technology in June at its WWDC conference and release it in September. Campos, which will have both voice and typing-based models, will be the primary new addition to Apple's upcoming operating systems. So it looks like iOS 27's main feature set is going to be this new chatbot. And I mentioned this on X and also on Threads. Could this be the introduction to Apple monetizing AI? Could we see a subscription pretty soon that's going to, you have to pay maybe $10 a month or something like that, and you get access to these Gemini models, this chatbots? Because Apple famously said a while back that they have no intention of creating a chatbot, turning Siri into a chatbot. But now here we are. We're expecting that in the next major version, iOS 27. So could this be behind a paywall? Because we're having back-to-back new versions of Siri, 26.4 and then iOS 27. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but would you pay for like an Apple Intelligence Plus where you get access to this true chatbot and maybe other models like Gemini, DeepSeek, and some of the other ones? And keep in mind, this will be different from the ChatGPT extension that we currently have on iOS right now. This will not be an extension. This will be a true chatbot. Now let's talk about this Apple event that's going to be happening next week, because there's been quite a lot of buzz on social media about this and a lot of speculation that Apple is launching new MacBooks next week at this event. So just to be clear what we're talking about here, Apple is hosting an Apple experience for creators on January 27th through January 29th in Los Angeles, California. And many people on social media, again, are speculating that this is a product launch. However, Apple clearly states here that this is an Apple experience, and it's most likely intended for creators only. And if you take a look at those dates again, you might notice that that falls right in between when Apple Creator Studio is set to launch. So the Creator Studio bundle, we talked about this last week, that is the bundle of all the creative applications for a monthly fee or a yearly fee. That is going to be launching next week in those dates, and like in that time frame right there. So my guess is that this, event, this experience is more so for Apple Creator Studio and not necessarily for the launch of new MacBook Pros, which are going to be the M5 Pro and M5 Max MacBook Pros. Now, could they release next week via press release? Sure, absolutely. But I don't think that this event specifically is intended to be a product launch event. So if you're seeing all that buzz on social media, I would maybe, not trust that that's going to be a product launch event, more so just something that's more private for creators. And I think that the launch of the new MacBook Pros are going to be a separate thing completely, and it's most likely just going to be a press release. But I have to say, it does make sense, and it would be really cool to see a surprise and see those MacBook Pros next week at this event, or, coinciding at the same time as this event, which it's possible. I mean, we're seeing low inventory on MacBook Pros right now anyways, and of course we are expecting those new MacBook Pros really soon as it is. So be on the lookout for that, and of course I will update you guys when they do actually get released. Now let's talk about Apple design, because we also got a big news story this week about Apple's John Ternus, because he is now the executive sponsor of Apple's design team. So we've heard about this for quite some time now, but we did see a new Bloomberg report this week that says this: Ternus is now billed internally as the executive sponsor of all design on Cook's management team. That entails being a bridge between design staff and Apple's top brass. He represents the design organization and executive team gatherings and manages the group's leaders. The role, which includes overseeing both hardware and software design, has long been entrusted to a senior leader. Going back to the Steve Jobs era, the company's success has always been closely linked to how its products look and feel. And Gurman pointed this out: Apple's design team has only ever been overseen by a very few prominent figures in Apple's history. Johnny Ive until 2019, Cook himself briefly between 2015 and 2017, and former COO Jeff Williams from 2019 to 2025. Ternus now joins that list. And a lot of people are speculating that, does this mean Tim Cook is like stepping down this year? Like, what's going on here? Well, Gurman did also, talk about this as well, because he says there are no signs that Tim Cook is stepping down imminently, but the company is clearly preparing for a post-Cook future. Aside from Ternus, the only other viable CEO candidate is COO Salman Khan. Now, speaking of design, let's talk about the upcoming AirPods Pro coming this year. Yes, you heard me right. Another pair of AirPods Pro coming this year, even though last year we saw the AirPods Pro 3 get introduced. And this is kind of weird because it's not exactly what it seems. I don't think that these are going to be the AirPods Pro 4. It's just going to be a modified alternate version of the AirPods Pro 3, kind of like we saw previously with the USB-C case. So here is the latest on that. So according to Ming-Chi Kuo, Apple is planning to introduce a new version of the AirPods Pro 3 later this year, and he says that these AirPods Pro will feature a more significant hardware upgrade with at least one tiny infrared camera inside. Those could be used to recognize hand gestures and provide an enhanced audio experience with the Apple Vision Pro. Now, these rumors were corroborated by Instant Digital over on Weibo, who said it will be a version that goes on sale alongside the AirPods Pro 3 with gesture controls and maybe the H3 chip inside. So yeah, as you guys know, Apple updates the AirPods every few years. Like, it's never a consecutive back-to-back year upgrade. So that's why we're probably going to see just another set of higher-end AirPods Pro that are tailored for Apple Vision Pro users. So me and 12 other people will be buying those when they do get released. But what do you think about these AirPods Pro 3 Pro? like, what are they going to be called? AirPods Pro 3 Pro, AirPods Pro 3 Ultra, or just AirPods Pro 3, with something in parentheses. Who knows? Okay, so now let's talk about a product that a lot more of you guys are going to be interested in, and that is the iPhone 18 Pro, because this week we got another new leak about the design of the 18 Pro. More specifically, the cutout up top and the dynamic island, because we saw rumors recently that said this thing is going to be moving up to the top left of the iPhone, and it's going to look really weird. Like, all the renders look so weird, but we're hearing that that's actually not going to happen. And this leak and rumor really made its rounds over the past week or so, and it showed that under display Face ID and the hole punch in the top left. But this week we saw Instant Digital clarify what's going on here with this rumor. So he said this, and keep in mind this is always broken English here, but he said this: the iPhone 18 Pro left-hand hole digging front camera is a complete misinformation. According to my traceability investigation, an English media said on Twitter at the beginning, before he said digging a hole on the left side, I and a Chinese and Korean media said the iPhone 18 Pro would place an infrared sensor under the screen on the top left. I suspect that the English author made a mistake in translation and thought it was a camera. So yeah, it sounds like a mistranslation, and Ross Young actually agreed with this, so he's the most credible of all when it comes to display leaks and rumors. So he, confirmed and basically corroborated that the 18 Pro will have a central pill cutout like we've had for a while, but the flood illuminator will be positioned under the display on the top left, while the IR sensor, the infrared sensor, will be positioned next to the selfie camera. And then we also just got an update on the actual size of the pill cutout on this iPhone 18 Pro, and this comes from leaker Ice Universe. So he says that the dynamic island cutout width on the iPhone 18 Pro and 18 Pro Max has been reduced from 20.76 millimeters to 13.49 millimeters, representing a reduction of approximately 35%. So yeah, expect a noticeable decrease in the dynamic island with the upcoming 18 Pro and Pro Max. Now this week, Apple increased the fees for Apple Cash instant transfers. So they just notified users that instant transfers via Apple Cash will get a fee increase on February 18th, and it's going to go up from 1.5% to 1.7% of the transaction total, with a minimum of 25 cents and a maximum of $25 for that fee. Okay, so now let's talk about software, because this week was really weird for software. We did not see any type of updates, whether that's beta or public releases. We didn't see anything for the iPhone this week. So we are still currently on iOS 26.3 beta 2, and we're almost at the end of January. So this is quite odd, because Apple typically releases the 0.3 updates in January, usually the end of January. So that puts us in a really weird spot. So I don't want to talk about too much about software, like performance, battery life, all that stuff is the same as last week. I don't want to waste your guys' time with that. But if we take a look at the calendar here, I want to talk about this, because next week is the final week of January. And I've had a lot of people asking me questions like, when are we going to see 26.3? When are we going to see the first beta for iOS 26.4 and that new Siri? Well, let's start with 26.3. Actually, let's start with iOS 26.2.1, because earlier in the week I got asked about that, and I mentioned that I don't think that update is coming at all. So we saw a lot of reports about this. It actually was a software version in the analytics logs on Mac Rumors. But, I said earlier, and I'll say it again now, I do not believe we're going to see a 26.2.1 at all. I think we're going to go straight to iOS 26.3. Now, since next week is the final week of January, I think it's very possible that we see the RC, or the release candidate build of iOS 26.3 on Monday the 26th, and then we might get the final official release of iOS 26.3 later on in the week, putting us still in that January timeframe. Now, could Apple switch this up and release 26.3 in February? Sure, it's possible. We could see it on the week of February 2nd, or even the week of February 9th for all we know. Apple is super unpredictable, and this is a very weird schedule they have going on here. However, I think, the consensus right now, if they want to stick with that January timeframe, is RC early in the week and then a final release later in the week. And then once iOS 26.3 gets released, we should see the first beta of iOS 26.4 get pushed out for developers and later on for public beta testers. Now, we don't know for sure if the new Siri, the revamped Siri that's powered by Google Gemini, if that's going to be in the first beta or not. We'll have to wait and see on that. But my guess is that it will be, because Apple is going to want to beta test this as much as possible, since it is quite a big update. So that's going to be one of the new features. The 0.4 updates are historically really large updates with a lot of new features, so I would not expect that to be the only change in that update. It's going to be a lot bigger than 26.3, which is a very, very minor update, as you guys know. And then finally, we have a crazy AirTag story. So this time, it started with a car break-in in Utah, but it quickly unraveled into a much bigger case involving stolen vehicles, firearms, drugs, and multiple victims, and it all came together thanks to one AirTag. So on January 13th, a man in Salt Lake City parked his 2018 gray Kia Sportage only to return and find the front passenger window smashed in, and his camera equipment, his laptop, and a hidden AirTag, which is key, had all been stolen. And at first he reported it to police, but the real progress came the next day when he opened up the Find My application on his iPhone and saw that his AirTag was pinging from a spot in West Valley City. He drove over to that location, and there he spotted a black 2019 GMC Acadia. So he activated the sound feature on the AirTag to find it, and he heard that it was coming from inside the SUV. So he called the police, and they actually showed up. They got a warrant, and they searched the vehicle, and what they found was wild. So not only was the man's stolen camera gear inside, but they also recovered a stolen firearm, drugs, and personal documents from other people. But that wasn't the only sketchy car at the scene, because parked right next to that GMC was a gray Toyota Sienna, which was registered to the same suspect, a 42-year-old named Michael. So detectives got another warrant to track down the Sienna's movements, and the very next morning, GPS showed that it was near a hotel in Holiday. Turns out, that exact same morning, another man had just reported his 4Runner stolen from that exact hotel. So police started connecting the dots, and eventually they found that stolen 4Runner parked right in front of the Sienna that they were tracking in Salt Lake City. So the thefts didn't even stop there. There's even more to this. So another victim came forward saying that her 2019 Tacoma had been broken into while parked downtown. Her back window was smashed, and her work bag with her personal items was stolen. Later on, the thief named Michael admitted to police that he had traded the bag for drugs. So eventually, detectives tracked down Michael to an apartment, and inside they found the keys to the stolen 4Runner, the victim's stolen camera gear, and the second victim's Pandora Heart jewel, and a pile of other stolen items tied to burglaries across Salt Lake City. So Michael was arrested on multiple charges, including theft of a firearm, theft of a vehicle, and running an organized theft operation, and he's now being held in jail without bail. But of course, none of this would have been possible without that one tiny hidden AirTag that this guy just so happened to steal. So always put AirTags on your valuables if you can, and try to hide them as well. Anyways, guys, that's it for this week's episode of Apple Weekly. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to the iOS 26.4 Siri updates, and of course the big iOS 27 Siri chatbot. So let me know all your thoughts about everything in this episode down in the comments section below. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.